All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and I'm joined by
Jerome Bourgeois, co-creator, co-founder, Movers Shakers Unlimited. How's everything, man? How you
It's
been?
good. It's good. It's good, man.
It's over there in DC.
Right. Yes. So Jerome, currently as it stands now, you are in New York, correct?
Yep. It's a little weekend trip, but you know, we got to switch it up sometimes. That's why you can see this background. It's like, yeah, I'm in a hotel, so got to
So,
switch up the production design, right? Anyway.
yeah. Sometimes you do. So, thanks for joining us for this episode of This Week in Review. As you know, every single week we like to do a rundown of the news stories or news bits that have made the rounds in the entertainment industry. We didn't typically we do this on Saturday, so you probably saw in the title that I have the 23rd in parentheses. But sometimes, just as we were just saying, you got to switch things up sometimes and move things to the next day with other due to other plans. But regardless, thanks for joining us. And as always, I want to get into a couple of quick reminders, some minutes before we get into our stories. So just make sure if you are following the news stories that we have, whether you're watching it live or you're watching an archive episode, that you're using that hashtag TWnRMNSU. So that's This Week in Review, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Additionally, know that if you enjoy a lot of the content that we do here at Movers and Shakers Unlimited, that you can also be a Patreon supporter. And I know I'm just assuming that a lot of people know what Patreon is, but if you're not aware, it is a platform that allows you to support your content creators. So if you feel the need, then you can provide some funds for some of the things that we use here in order to provide the content that you love and enjoy. And if you go to that link, I'll pull it up here. It gives a breakdown of what perks are in place depending on the amount that you are providing to your content creators. So that link being ours. So it's all types of things, whether it's getting a shout out. And by the way, I want to send a shout out to Jerome Bourgeois, who is a Patreon supporter with us. However, we also have some other perks in place as well, whether it's with some live streams, some Ask Me Anythings. So just take a look because there are some cool things in place that we have for you guys for those that want to be Patreon supporters. But with that out of the way, let's get into some of the stories that made the rounds over the course of this week. I mean, it was pretty jam packed. I feel it's kind of an understatement of many things that have happened in the industry. But I'll start first with what happened last week with DC Fandom. And just talking about that show. If you guys aren't aware, DC Fandom is, I guess you can say, for all intensive purposes, is in essence like a virtual con, of sorts, where it provides fans an opportunity to check out a lot of the properties that the DC universe has coming, and it could be from all mediums, whether it's TV, film, video games, what have you. It runs the gamut of many of those different media forms of places in which we can enjoy content that is related to the DC universe and those characters. Now, there were so many things that came out of DC Fandom, in terms of like trailers for what is it, Black Adam, and looks at the new Aquaman and
Batman,
even the
Flash.
Batman and all those things. So Jerome, what were your thoughts on it? And then I actually have something else to share with you guys too, in case you guys missed it. But go ahead.
No, I mean, I was definitely excited for the Batman trailer and the Flash trailer. Those are really good. Or at least like kept me interested. Flash, definitely I'm excited for, because it's like how they're tying in the several Batmans. They have like Michael Keaton narrating it. and then you see these multiple flashes from different timelines. They're like, hey, what do you say? He's like, are you in? And I'm like, yeah, it's great. And I know, we know Ben Affleck's in it too. I mean, who knows? Maybe Christian Bale might be in the movie, but whatever. I'm excited for that. What is it? The Batman trailer. Definitely, it's definitely looking interesting still. How they're highlighting the Riddler, and I had to watch it a couple times to realize, like, oh yeah, that's Colin Farrell as the Penguin, because it was pretty good makeup. With and then also Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, Selena Kyle in there. What else was in there? Yeah, those are the main things. Now, I'm sorry, like with Black Adam, I'm still not like as impressed because it didn't really do much for me. That was just like a little tiny tease, and I'm like, whatever. I'll wait until they have like a real trailer. But I was like, whatever. To me, that wasn't really. I wasn't really all excited for that, even though I still want to see the movie. I think it could be cool, but that wasn't enough. The little behind the scenes on the Shazam sequel that looked interesting too. And the same with Aquaman, the Aquaman sequel. Those are more like tidbits, little behind the scenes thing. I know they've also there was a brief mention of how Wonder Woman 3 is coming. Of course, I mean, that's going to be later down the line. But yeah, I mean, I would say really the trailers and the behind the scenes stuff, that was the stuff that I'm, most excited for. And yeah, I mean that the Batman is really, that's the one that's coming, coming soon. I mean, that's supposed to be in March, I think. So yeah, can't wait to see that. Oh yeah, and the Peacemaker, was it Peacemaker trailer? That was interesting. Now I kind of see like what the James Gunn and I guess HBO Max was thinking regarding that character, but yeah, I mean, I'll probably check that out too, just see how it is. And oh yeah, I think the only other thing I remember that was kind of interesting. I mean, like I said, still talk was just they're talking about Batgirl. So it's cool, like when they have those behind the scenes,
some concept art of what it would look like.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, but to me that's like whatever. It's like anyone could. That's not a big deal. It's like, okay, like a big deal is like we see like behind the scenes footage, or I mean, to me, like if I see stuff like that, it's like cool. Yeah, you get an idea, but it's better than nothing. I'll give it that. I like how at least they're sharing something. That's cool. But
I would just say this: the thing that was cool in terms of what they showed was I guess not just what, and I will have to agree to disagree that like I really enjoyed the Black Adam stuff, because I mean there's been so much hype about the production in and of itself, and to finally see something in action like was cool.
All they did was just go up and when they're shooting. I was like, what is that? They're just shooting him and he goes. I'm like, that's it.
Point, like we keep getting teasers of, oh, it's gonna be so awesome, or oh, but I'm like, okay, well, show us something, and we finally got something. And mind you, it was a small tidbit.
But I'm saying, but it was nothing special. So that's my problem. It was just like nothing. It was just they were shooting at him and then he goes up.
And him electrocuting.
He just goes up. How is that special?
Him electrocuting and turn him to dust. That was pretty cool.
Wow, big, that's not that was nothing.
I enjoyed
that's not nothing special. Nothing special.
Aside from that,
I am disappointed. The Rock, you could do better than that.
Was I want to say it's called Gotham Knights, so it's in that Arkham universe with the game, and mind you, it's been a while since I've been up on my games, but at least from what they show from Arkham Knights, and even from the Suicide game that they have, it looks like it would be a lot of fun. Also within that Arkham universe. So I would say those two properties. I'm not really, I'll be honest, until I see more of it, I'm kind of in the boat of how you felt about Black Adam. That's the way I feel about the Shazam sequel. I need to see more of it to really get excited about it, because from what I saw of it, I mean, yeah, they showed some behind the scenes stuff, but it didn't really do anything for me at all. And then I'm gonna say something really unpopular here, like, and don't get me wrong, I'm gonna go see it when it comes into theaters, because I'm still excited to check it out. But I know people are losing their minds over the Batman. Like it was all right. Like it wasn't like mind blowing. It was like, oh my gosh, like that was amazing. Like, I mean, it was all right. Like,
Well, I mean, it's hard to compare though. I mean, we've had a great Batman trilogy already, so I mean, anything coming out after this is gonna be hard to compare. But yeah, I mean,
I'm
but it
still,
was good
again,
enough for me to
guys,
be like,
like
I still want to
all of
see
you
it.
out
Like, I'm
there,
like,
I'm
okay,
still gonna go see it,
and
but
at least
like
they're
it
giving it a
wasn't like,
take.
oh
They're
my
giving it
gosh,
a,
that was amazing.
but they're still giving it like a. But they're still get. Yeah, I wasn't. Nah, I mean, I wasn't like that either. But they're giving. At least they're giving it a different spin where it's like more. It seems more like a detective type of crime drama thriller, and
I'll be
he's
honest,
more like.
like
I
out of
mean,
the
at
two
least it looks
trailers,
like
I
they're
actually
focusing. They're
like
trying
the
to focus
first
more on
one
that.
better than the one that they debuted at DC Fandom last week. Like the teaser one, I feel was better, but again, I'm still
I
gonna go
mean,
see it. But I just
yeah,
enjoyed that first trailer. So
they're both better
again,
than that Black
agree
Adam
to
little
disagree.
piece of
But
crap.
also with that, also guys, I was
I
gonna
was like,
say
that's
in
all
case
you
you
got.
missed it,
Oh my
in
god,
case
man.
you missed
That
it,
was
we also
whack. Sorry,
had
man. If
additional
you think that was
footage
whack, that Black
as
Adam stuff was
well,
whack as up.
where we had we had a good friend, mutual friend, Blake Neely. Shout out to Blake. He came on the show to talk about his work on DC fandom, because if you guys aren't aware, that theme that you guys enjoyed for DC fandom was happening. It was something that he actually put together himself. So if you guys aren't familiar with Blake, if you aren't familiar at this point, as much as he's been on the show, and he's provided so much of his talents as a composer, which you can see off to the side there. He is the composer of the Arrowverse, so Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, all of those shows. So it was cool to actually have him pop in there and talk about how he came about doing a theme, and borrowing various themes from well-known entities, whether it's with Superman and Batman, and all of those things. So I'll make sure to include the link there in the comments for you. But no, check that out as well, because I think we may have been one of the few outlets, guys, that actually had the composer of DC fandom, because I checked. But yeah, so be sure to check that out as well. But before we move on to the next story, outside
Yeah, shout
of
out to
our
Blake.
disagreement of Black Adam, was there anything else, Jerome?
See the movie. I think it could be good. I just thought that teaser was just nothing special. Like that's all I'm
Again,
saying.
I
I
agree to
love The Rock.
disagree.
I think it could be cool. I'm just saying what they showed was just. I was like nothing to get out of. But that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying the movie's gonna be whack another, but I'm just saying it wasn't enough to get me excited. That's all I'm
Fair.
saying.
We
But
agree to
anyway,
disagree.
whatever. We can next
Agree to
story.
disagree,
Next
yeah.
story. Yeah, I just think it's funny, but whatever. That's why we have this
Exactly.
show,
We're
man.
not always going to agree. So, switching gears about disagreements. Geez, probably on a more extreme basis, not on a small basis like ours. Is what's going on with Iatse. So if you guys aren't aware, let me pull that up here. Here we go. So this story has been ongoing in terms of what's happening in the industry, and what's been happening with this strike. If you guys aren't familiar with it, IATSE basically is dealing with in it's the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, and it deals with some of the horrible conditions that they're dealing with in the industry when we're working on many of these folks are working on the projects that we know and love, whether it's on TV and film. And when I talk about the folks that are behind the scenes, I'm talking about your hairstylists, your electricians, your prop makers, cinematographers, editors, what have you. And right now, there has been a issue with the condition, as I said, the conditions on those sets, and whether or not yeah, the idea that many of those elements need to change, that kind of has been swept under the rug, and hasn't really been addressed in terms of how long the work hours are, or even the number of breaks that are provided for many of these workers. So Jerome, share your thoughts on the idea that there may be an agreement that may be reached, but we'll see, because right now, based on what has been stipulated in this agreement, it may not come to pass. So
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened is, well, at least like the AMPTP and Iatse, they came to a tentative agreement. So they averted the strike, and that was good. I know this is like a follow up to a previous story we had, and basically the tentative agreement provides a 54-hour weekend and 10-hour turnaround time between shifts for all workers on all productions. So some people are already getting that. So some are hoping for more than 10 hours, as well as other wage and residual provisions that are not in the deal. And they also wanted to make a broader point about conditions on set, which may find to be inhumane and unsustainable. This is according to this Variety article that reported on it. So, I mean, hey, look, there's that Iatse represents 60,000 TV and film, members across the country. If they went on strike, it would be devastating. I mean, it'd be like the large. I was hearing in the press, it would be like one of the largest strikes, or the largest strike to ever happen, compared, for a while, like compared to like, I forgot what strike that happened a long time ago, but this is like it would be one of the biggest strikes.
I don't know
So
if you're referencing
they definitely had a lot. They definitely have a lot of leverage. No, not entertainment. I'm talking about just strikes, period, because this is even more people. So like across industries, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. But the whole point is, look at it. We're in a time where a lot of employees and contractors, they have leverage now, because there's a lot more positions that need to be filled, and not everybody is filling them because either A, they're not paying that well, B, they're not as flexible as they should be now, because flexibility is key, and C, it's more dangerous to work some of these jobs now because of COVID and the pandemic, and people are realizing, hey, I don't need to risk it's not worth it for me to get paid a bad wage or an okay wage to risk my life or whatever. So those same elements apply to the entertainment industry, and rightfully so. I mean, they work their butts off, and some basic things should have been addressed a while back. So now they're finally getting addressed, and it's good that they did come to some sort of agreement, but it doesn't mean that they couldn't go further. And some of these agreements I was reading about and hearing were the particular sense of these specific deals set by the streaming companies, because when they set their deal with when they had their agreement with Iatse, they were considered new media, and as new media, they were able to get like a lower rate, or they were able to get like their wages down, and there were some other stipulations that maybe weren't the best, because it was kind of like experimental to see, we don't know if these movies or these shows are going to do well because it's new media. It's not traditional media like, broadcast network or premium cable or, theatrical. But now they've proven themselves, and these shows are making so much more. They're making a lot of money and everything. So now it's like they have, Iatse has justification for renegotiating these deals, rightfully so. So that's what basically happened. So it's a combination of that, but really the turnaround stuff, I mean, I don't see why that's such an issue. Like why, the AMPTP, or representing all the producers in these networks and streamers and distributors, why they're not, like, why that was, it seems to be pulling teeth to just give people at least 12 hours in between shoots. I mean, it's ridiculous. You're working 12-hour days, 12 to 14, sometimes 15. I'm hearing sometimes 20 hours. It's like not unheard of to be working these long hours. You got to have some time to go to sleep, get some food, spend time with your family, whatever. Like, you can't be going back like within 8 hours, 6. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, it's like if you go to a regular job, 9 to 5, I mean, or 6, whatever, you get off at 6 o'clock, you come back like 9 a.m. the next day. I mean, think about it. Like 6, 6 to 6 a.m. That's 12 hours. Another that's 15-hour turnaround for like a regular job. Okay, there's other jobs where people working their butts off, but that's also their usually it's different positions where like there's commission or there's incentive or like you want to do that because you want to make more money or whatever. But some of these jobs where like they can be dangerous. You're lifting a lot of equipment. You're driving around a lot. You're doing a lot of and I mean, I know we're going to get into our next story, which is a big story that actually is tied into this with that accident that happened on the Rust set. I mean, I know we can talk about it later, but that's also giving people leverage to be like, look, there's these bad working conditions also can lead to danger and lead to accidents. And also it's just not fair. And I even heard on that set, I mean, on the Rust set, that some of the crew members, the union crew members left. And also because they're like, it was unsafe work conditions, but also there were crew members that were I think they were in it's either Albuquerque or they were living 50 miles from Santa Fe where they were shooting that movie, and the producers wouldn't pay for their hotel to stay in that area, which after like a long 12-hour day. So think about it. Imagine you work for 12 hours and then you got to drive 50 miles to go to sleep or whatever and then come back. You could get an accident by like being so tired. So it's like little things like that. It's like you can't afford that in your budget. I mean, this is like basic
and I was
stuff.
gonna
It's
say,
like it's just
we do have a
ridiculous. You
question
can't be
that
cutting
came
corners like
in.
that.
Josh, thanks for hopping on. Your question, are these conditions because of studios or because of individual directors? So it's more so because of the studios, because and those two, because
Producers
this
too.
when we're talking about the directors at the end of the day are just hired in order to put the project together and to help guide. I mean,
Well,
and
that
a lot of
depends
times
though.
they're
That
there to
depends on
help
the
guide the ship.
situation though.
If we're talking about TV, the people that are in charge are your showrunners. So like, it's
For
not going to be
that,
the
yeah.
directors. It's not the same type of hierarchy that you would have in the film system. Like in TV, it's a lot
Unless they're a
different.
producer also
So
or something.
it's
Yeah.
whoever is funding those projects. I know you were just saying producers. So, I mean, it could be in an example of a director in rare cases if they also, are acting as the, producer, and perhaps their production company is help financing that project. But it's wherever, just ideally, just to keep in mind, is wherever the money is coming from, whoever is financing, that project, because they're going to be they're having that say of ensuring that project gets off the ground. So,
But it's also the people, but also I would say from the producers or directors how
correct.
they are
Yep.
managing the set and like are enforcing stuff, because that's another thing. You could be like, oh yeah, everything's cool, and then you're not checking on the people who are like, you're not holding those people accountable who are actually directly involved in, like really the assistant director runs the set. They're the one who runs the set, and the directors, directors doing all the creative decisions or whatever. Usually that's how it is, but you have to make sure your assistant director is on point. And then same with like production manager, like all those other roles, they're looking up to the producers, directors, but they have to be held accountable. And if your producers are inexperienced or they don't know what they're doing or whatever, or they just don't care, like it's a combination. But yes, at the end, the buck does stop at the producers and the financiers and it's like, if you're the director, you should really be like, you should know this stuff too. Like
rules and
you should be,
regulations and all
you
that.
got to set an example. So
Because
they're all really held accountable.
I was gonna say, speaking
like
speaking from
nobody's
experience,
really,
I can do a first-hand account of this. As for those of you that are not aware, I've had a prior life as a a child star, so to speak, and doing a little bit of acting stuff earlier in my formative years. And those rules are quite fascinating too, in terms of child labor laws of how much time you're allowed to be on set
Exactly.
when you're a certain age, and then even other things that need to be a part of the contract in terms of your schooling and all of that type of thing that may get interrupted by being on a set for a television series, or being on a set for a film. So so many factors come into play, and it's very it's very detailed, and it's very specific on what is allowed and what is not allowed. So that's why it's so key to have those teams to be really on top of what those regulations are. And that's why it's also important for you to be on top of it, so that way if there's an issue you're able to address it. So yeah. Any additional thoughts before we move on to our next story?
No, I mean,
We'll get to it later.
I don't know if we're doing the
Yeah,
other.
it
Which one we're
is
doing next?
similar. Yeah,
But all I'm saying is this whole story was its own story until a couple of days ago, where now it's like I think there's gonna be more of a pushback now on this deal because of of that tragic incident that happened on the Rust set. Because yeah, I mean it's sad to say, obviously that is a tragedy, but it's like it's not just it's like a culmination of all these
factors. Yeah,
bad things that have been happening that have kind of been swept under the rug, like we're saying, and it's like these are some of the consequences that can happen when people are trying to cut corners or whatever. And it's like you cut corners, you do all these cut these corners for what reason? Like now those producers, they're gonna have to pay. Like I'm hearing also with the insurance, like the insurance might not, if you're not following proper safety protocols, and you're telling the insurance company this is what you're doing, they're not going to insure your production when stuff like this happens. So this is like they've opened a can of worms. I know we'll get to that in the next story, but I'm just saying like all of this is connected. So I do not get surprised. I would not be surprised if now those members probably reject this deal, and then now they're going to push for even more, safety measures, better benefits, less hours that they're being forced to work. And another thing is the meal penalty. A lot of these producers, directors, they don't mind violating, having the meal penalty several times, because I guess the fine is not as much money, and how much they're paying them isn't enough to be like, oh, we have to make sure they have their lunch at this time, because they're like, whatever, we'll pay the stupid meal penalty. We just want to hurry up and shoot it and get it done. And I'm like, no job, I don't care what it is, making movies, you're sweeping, you're freaking working McDonald's, you're a banker, doctor, no job is worth like losing your health over, dying, having no life. This is just basic humanity, human, I guess you could say qualification, human decency, So, hey, big up to Iatse and its members. Like I'm all for them, fighting for more, more benefits and better workplace conditions, because it is ridiculous. I mean, there's really no excuse. So you can still make a lot of money. You still can profit and make a lot of money and still pay people well and give them a decent work-life balance, and, not have to worry about dying or having mental breakdowns or messing up their health and like just living a miserable life, working to death. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But anyway,
so yeah,
move to the next story.
We're going to talk about another story that can fall, similarly in that same regard. However, just to switch gears a bit, I wanted to talk about another story also that made the rounds. I suppose on a lighter note that deals with the John Wick franchise, and that involves a prequel series that is on the way, that is coming to Stars. And what we understand also is that Gibson is set to star, in this prequel series that will be titled The Continental. So, as I said, over the course of this week, they had the story that this prequel series and Mel Gibson coming on board the project. If you guys, aren't aware of what's going on with that project, in a story that came from Deadline, an exclusive from Deadline, by the way. So, shout out to them. Thank you for, just to give them the nod. The Continental will explore the origin behind the Hotel for Assassins. So if you guys aren't aware, if you guys aren't familiar with the John Wick series and, that whole lore that was created, or universe, if you will, of assassins and how their world works, the Continental was that refuge and that place where assassins, were safe, even in lieu of, the line of work that they were in. So the official synopsis for the Continental for this series will explore the origin behind the Hotel for Assassins, which increasingly has become the centerpiece of the John Wick universe. This will be accomplished through the eyes and actions of a young Winston Scott, who is dragged into the hellscape of a 1975 New York City to face the past that he left behind. So if you guys aren't familiar with that character of Winston Scott, that is the character that is played by Ian McShane. However, in regards to Gibson, Gibson actually will be playing a character named Cormac. Now, right off the bat, I do have some thoughts and I have some theories about this news, but just initially, Jerome, tell me, how you feel about this story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see. It'd be interesting to see this. To see this. It's really not even a show. It's like a miniseries.
Yeah,
I
they
think
did
it's like
say
a three.
miniseries, so yeah.
They're trying to make it like a, and I think that's probably a good way to start it off. Um, you know, look, I know. I'm gonna be honest. It's like, look, I know that obviously anything you cast Mel Gibson in right now, like obviously there's gonna be controversy. Some people might not want to watch this because of, and some people like after a while, maybe they might forgive him or whatever. I'm more interested in the product and seeing how it is because I'm just like, look, I mean, I can't, you can't know everything that everyone's does in their personal life and what they say. I mean, even if you do, it's like, I don't know, people have to make that decision. So I'm wondering if that would affect the viewership at all, but I don't know. I think if people think it's interesting, they would check it out. But regardless, I like the idea of trying to explore that because I think that's a little bit different than just having these additional movie sequels, which I'm still gonna watch and enjoy. But I do feel like honestly, I thought after the third one that would be it. But I mean, good God, they were doing 2 more movies. I mean, I don't know how much more.
Yeah, we got another one coming. So yeah,
there's supposed to be at least 2 more. But I'm like, I don't know how much more you can milk out of the franchise and it not get played out. Even though I'll still check it out. We'll see what they do. At least this is a different spin on it. So I'm excited to see how that's going to play out. And it's good to see the origins. Like, how did this hotel come to fruition? And like, where did all these assassins come from? And why did they go there? And how did this underground network get created? And how was that guy? What is it? Yeah. Winston. Is that his name? How did he become, like the, the person who like manages the hotel or like is in charge of that, underworld in that area. So, and I know, yeah. So yeah, you said Ian McShane, he played him. I think they cast the younger version. I was reading it somewhere. Because I know they just recently cast like 5 other people to be in that show. There was another article. Oh no, yeah, Colin Woodell. He's supposed to play the young Winston Scott. That's what I read. Another story by Deadline. And they said Point du Jour will play Miles. Let's see, who else did they cast? They also cast Jessica Allen, Michelle Prada, Nung Kate. I don't know if I'm saying that name correctly, and Ben Robson. So they're really continuing to get this underway and cast a lot of these younger, versions of characters or add these new characters. Regarding Mel Gibson's character, I mean, let's see. I mean, I don't know. I know he's supposed to be some mysterious. What they say, he's supposed to be some mysterious guy, or they're not mentioning who. He'll play a character named Cormac.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah,
Cormac. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have no idea where that's gonna go, but no, I think it's cool. I think it's always cool when they bring like you bring like a bigger star into the into like a TV series or a miniseries that you haven't really that hasn't had one yet. So I think that's interesting. So but yeah, man, I don't know who do you think that character is, or what impact he's gonna have on the franchise as that in that role. So
I don't know. So here's the thing, like in thinking of this franchise, I'll be honest. Initially, my thoughts were perhaps, and I've completely forgotten. I'll be honest. I completely forgotten that Mel Gibson, or to say that they had already cast a younger version for Ian's character. So like initially off the jump, I was just thinking based off of what they oftentimes do with franchises like these, is that they'll have I guess you could say they'll have like a code name, or they'll have a moniker for a lot of projects, or they'll have like a code name for like a role when they're trying to keep things close to the vest of who a person's actually playing. So now remembering that they did, in fact, cast that character, because I was like, man, they could technically, you could technically have, Mel Gibson play a younger Ian McShane, if you wanted to, based on how they look. But
he's pretty old though.
yes, he is.
I don't know.
But I mean, yeah, I suppose so. If it is happening 30, 40 plus years ago, then
I mean, you could
yeah,
use
that
de-aging technology, but still.
yeah, and I mean, it still would be pretty cool. Like, can you imagine like Mel Gibson playing like a younger Ian McShane? But again, I digress. Like I said, it completely slipped my mind that they had, in fact, already cast that role. Now that we know, now that is a fact, that makes me picture that he must be Mel Gibson is not going to join, a project like this of this caliber just to be like a cameo or to be, a smaller character. So my guess is that he may be whoever the antagonistic, portion of this miniseries is, and perhaps he is whatever the big bad that Ian, that younger character, has to contend with, in getting the Continental, or maybe he was the person that was in charge of the Continental. Again, I don't have no proof of this, but I'm just, theorizing. Maybe he was in charge of the Continental prior. So that being, in talking about a younger version of Ian's character of Winston, that Winston has to go up against Cormac, and Cormac is whatever that obstacle is that he has to contend with, in this underworld back in the 70s. But again, no proof of that, but that would make the most sense, because I mean, Mel Gibson, has played some villains, and he's played some effective villains. I mean, say what you will about
Expendables 3.
Expendables
He was
franchise.
good in,
yeah, say what you will
he was
about
good
that,
in
but
that.
he was great as a villain. Say what you will about the movie as a whole, mind you, but
I
like
like
him as
anyway.
him as a villain, like he's great, and he's menacing as a villain. So,
and in Payback, he was kind of not like the villain, but he was like a badass, like not caring, he's good at playing the badass.
Just in general, like, yeah, when he has to play like an antagonist, he is very effective as an antagonist, and he's menacing, and like you feel the weight of, a lot of times, like, in order to be a great villain, you have to have that presence, you have to have that charisma, and I mean, Mel Gibson has that in spades. So, if that's where they're going with this, and that's what they're deciding to do with this, then more power to him. The only issue that I have, and I've mentioned this before whenever we've talked about the idea of prequels, is just that idea of, whenever you're doing a prequel, and I get the appeal of something that's well known, an IP like this that's well known, and going back and talking about its beginnings, is that they're really, you have to be very careful to ensure that there is some conflict, or elements in which there is some suspense involved, because if you're having characters that we know are going to be in other stories later down the line, then there's no sense of dread for that character, because we know that they're going to survive, because they have to survive in order to be in the stories going forward. So that's my only thing. If you're going to have, if anything, I would say they're really going to have to find an effective way to tell that story in order for that to be entertaining. Because if we know that that character, like I said, survives later and becomes like a mentor of sorts, or ally of John Wick, then we're not really going to be that invested, because we're going to be like, okay, it doesn't matter what situation you're going to throw him in, he's basically, it's foolproof in terms of him actually dying, because he can't die. So your final thoughts, on that before we move on to the next story.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I mean, I feel like sometimes that's inevitable. Like, they're gonna have some characters just to tie it in, but for what I'm looking for more is just making that idea, the idea and the origins of this hotel that's like safe ground for assassins, and just the idea of like that network being created, like just seeing that, like, to me, because I mean, the way I look at it is like, I think it's not always the end of the world when you still have some characters later on that will survive or whatever. If you really have just a really interesting, different origin story, like I've always said this, and I'll say it again. I really hope eventually with Star Wars they do like the origins of the Sith type of story. It's like, or at least like the the story about what happens with the Emperor and he said Darth Plagueis or whatever the guy's name is, who like
Plagueis,
yeah, like okay, we know the Emperor's gonna die, but when he talks about how like he killed his master, like I want to know. It would be really interesting to see what happened at the very beginning of the Sith, like how that faction started and continued, or even showing his story when he was younger. And it's like I know that the Emperor is gonna become the Emperor and kill, but it's like I think if they really, really laid down the groundwork for that story, or even with like Yoda and how he was started off into his race, like why is he so powerful? Why is he living so long? Like I'm intrigued by that. Even though I know Yoda is gonna survive and kick a lot of butt later. Same with Darth Sidious. If that story is intriguing enough, and you have other characters that they're talking about and see how they died or whatever, and I mean, even though you kind of know what's gonna happen with these other characters, that still is enough to suffice to be like, okay, this warrants a prequel that could be, compelling enough. But I don't know with the Continental, do they have enough characters like that to make me be like, oh, I really need to see what happened. But I don't know if they really lay the groundwork of what really happened to create this network. It could be interesting, but then again, like how many characters are they going to have that are going to survive, that are compelling enough? Because let's be honest, like John Wick is cool. I like Keanu Reeves playing John Wick, and you have some cool side characters, but these movies aren't about, oh, are these characters so amazing? No, you're watching these movies because they choreograph action amazingly, and he's an assassin, whatever. We're not watching these movies to be like, oh, snap, this is the most amazing character development in the world. Like, let's be honest, that's not. You're watching it because the action and the choreography, and it's a cool concept, but they really got to delve deeper into some of these characters. To be
I'll say this. I'm okay with, again, being prequel. I've already said my 2 cents about, how I feel about prequels. And I feel the only way that you could logically, and I feel like Game of Thrones is doing it, in a great way, is that they're going so far back. They're going back, a couple of, a couple of 100 years. So that way, even though it's going to have repercussions down the line, we still have, a sense of dread, because anyone could, you could put other characters in there, and it's so far, it's removed enough from the story that we know that you can have, characters bite the bullet or things happen. I feel like when you're doing a story like that, like it's far more effective when it's more removed from the main story and is not intrinsically tied with some of the characters from the original IP. So if you're going back, maybe a couple of generations or maybe an ancestor, like, at least it's enough far removed that you can have, a breath of space to tell that story without having, the weight of the original IP weighing down on it. I mean, that's we'll see what happens with that Game of Thrones prequel, because I feel like that will be the most effective way in doing a prequel is going that far back. Or I was going to say, additionally, in talking about prequels, picturing what they're doing with Mandalorian, because it's far enough removed from Skywalker's.
Yeah, exactly.
You can enjoy the story because you don't, anything can happen, because you're not beholden specifically to the main plot of Star Wars. Like, it can have repercussions, mind you. Like, it could have things that you can say, oh, this happened off to the side here because of this event, but it's not something where you're like, oh, this character's in here. Oh, I know that character's safe.
Well, except for Boba Fett, though. Except for Boba
Yeah,
Fett, though, because
yeah,
that
yeah,
was like, oh yeah, I guess we need to make a TV show. We like the characters so much. I thought
yeah,
it's like how many times, I mean,
yeah,
whatever. That's not the only character. Obviously in the Star Wars movie, like, oh, you thought the Emperor was dead.
yeah,
You
yeah.
thought Boba Fett was dead, but I guess not. Hey, he's so popular, he can fight his way out of anything because we need to sell more merchandise and people like the character.
But I'm saying, just to sum it up, when you remove yourself enough from the main story, I feel that that's an effective way to do a prequel. Or if you have something off to the side somewhere else where you can
Yeah, of
introduce characters
course.
to
You
the
can get away with
universe,
it. You can get
but
away
you don't
with it.
have to worry about there being characters that are completely safe. Because and when you have characters that are completely safe like that, I feel like it's boring and it doesn't make the show entertaining at all. So we'll
Exactly,
see.
yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, we'll see if it's good. I mean, it's the same company who created, obviously Lionsgate, Star. They own Stars. So, and I like how it's they're doing like a mini series, not an actual series. Like, start off with that and see what happens. But I'll be honest, like I also read somewhere, I think they're doing like a Saw series, and I don't honestly, man. Some movies, or whatever, they don't need series. I haven't checked out that Chucky series, but I'm like.
What I saw, I haven't watched mine.
I know, but
I
I'm
haven't
like,
seen
dude, man,
episode
I feel
2,
like
but
people are
episode 1 is good.
The pilot
is good.
They're just trying to, make whatever they can out of something to make a TV series. I'm like, do we really need all these movies turned into shows? I don't know. I haven't seen them, but whatever.
And
anyway.
I will say, speaking before we move, one last thought before we move on to the next story, and speaking about Chucky, is one thing again, doing something that, hasn't been done yet, is that they are going to delve further into the, Charles Lee Ray's, life as a youngster and as a kid, like him growing up. And we haven't had that in any of the Chucky installments so far.
Wait, who growing up? The actual? What do you mean? Oh, Chucky growing up?
So no. So the character that possesses the doll. So Charles Lee Ray, the killer. Like we're gonna
having him grow up. You're saying?
Yeah, like we're gonna go back into the past and talk about his upbringing and that type of thing. So
wow, yeah, I don't know if that's
far.
Yeah, but I don't know does that warrant a show? I don't know. Okay, well,
we'll see.
I'm not interested in that guy. I'm interested in Chucky and how he affects people. But whatever. Hey,
again, the pilot.
Whatever. We'll see, man. I mean, if it's done well, I'll give it a chance. I never saw that Lethal Weapon show, and I still refuse to. But whatever, it could be okay, but it ain't. I mean, what was the point? Rush Hour show. Like, come on, people. Yeah, when you have a movie that's a clone of a franchise, and then you make a show that's a clone of a clone, like, what are we doing now? Anyway.
We digress.
Let's make a copy of a. Let's make a show. Let's make a show that's a ripoff of Fast and Furious. That's a ripoff of Point Break. I mean, get out of here. Why don't we do that, Brandon? Let's create one. Anyway.
We digress. Moving on to the next story. We had a story surrounding Castle Rock Entertainment. So news came this week that they will get a relaunch with some new funds, if you will, quite a few, 175 million to be exact. So in this story, and give me 1 second. Yes, here we go. So in this story out of Variety, there, as I said, 175 million is going to be infused into Castle Rock Entertainment. It is going to still have its CEO, so it's still going to have Rob Reiner acting as CEO. It will have its co-presidents, Michelle Reiner and Matthew George. If you guys aren't familiar with Castle Rock Entertainment, they're behind, some very iconic films such as, When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, In the Line of Fire, City Slickers, Miss Congeniality. And it's even behind Seinfeld. Many of you that enjoy the series Seinfeld, the long-running series, iconic series Seinfeld. So, Jerome, you hear the news of this organization being provided with funds to continue to put out projects, and how do you feel about it?
And was it? Oh, man, come on, man! You gotta mention all the movies. The American President, The Shawshank Redemption.
There's more. But go ahead, your thoughts.
I think those are more important. I mean, to me, those are more important than Seinfeld. But anyway, Shawshank Redemption is like the best movie, one of the best movies ever made. But anyway, yeah, man. No, I'm excited for this because I like Rob Reiner, and he's a great director. He like I said, a lot of those movies are classics. They're great. They're amazing. They're they're mid-budget. A lot of them are mid-budget dramas. Some are comedies, or like dramedies. And he directed a lot of those films. I mean, not all of them. I mean, a good amount. And to me, it sounds like they're trying to bring back those types of films. I mean, 175 million, that's not that much for, I guess, that maybe those budgeted films. But I mean, maybe they might want to make some smaller budget films, or I don't know. But
in lieu of the type of projects that they do, I mean, that's a not nothing to snuff at.
No, I know, but I'm saying back in the day, those films, I mean, a lot of those films are probably like at least 20 to 30, some could have been 50 million. So yeah, they could still do a few of those, but maybe they're gonna. No, I don't know. Maybe they'll do some more lower budget films. I don't know. Or this could be this also is just a production fund, so this could just be the initial financing. And they could always partner with other people, so that's good. But it's good to know that he's getting, his company is getting funding again, because, like I said, he has a good track record, and I mean, he could definitely, just bring some newer voices and some newer stories that are in the vein of some of those other classics. And yeah, I'm wondering. The question would be, just because they have this production fund, like what kind of deals will they strike with which distributors? Because, like I said, if they're making films like that, there's probably a higher chance they might have to make some deals with like Netflix or Amazon or Apple, because it's sadly to say that a lot of those mid-budget type of films have a harder time making their money back in theaters or getting those budgets. So, but it would be interesting if maybe they do strike a deal like that and they can make a few of those types of films, because that's kind of what's getting lost now. It's like you either have a really low budget films that might be, they'll get released theatrically and they'll have a theatrical run, or these really big budget blockbuster tent poles, that people go to see. Everything else in the middle, for the most part, ends up on the streamers, which is still an opportunity and it's great. But that's kind of the complaint you hear from a lot of these filmmakers who used to make those types of movies. They're like, they don't make them anymore. And it's not that they don't make them anymore. They're just they're not being shown and usually in the same, the same places that they used to be, which is in theaters for the most part. Now they're more in streamers. But it's just good to hear that he's going to be doing some more projects and he's going to get some funding for that, because like I said, I'm a fan of a lot of those movies. American President, Shawshank Redemption, When Harry Met Sally, Few Good Men, In the Line of Fire. Yeah, so I just thought it was interesting, and it's also interesting seeing some of these, in addition to newer filmmakers getting production deals and funding and financing, like you're getting also some of the veteran guys still in the game doing their thing, because that's also been an issue too. I know that even people like Martin Scorsese, I know he was talking about how, like, well, at least for The Irishman, he wasn't able to get funding anywhere except for Netflix, and that's why I went to Netflix. So that's all I'm saying. Like, these types of filmmakers usually are struggling to get financing for the types of projects they want to make that they would usually initially want to be released in theaters, but it might not always be the case. So, we'll see what happens and what kind of films Rob Reiner ends up making with this production fund.
Nah, for sure. And I guess in terms of my thoughts on it is just that idea that, just as you were talking about, of having, those projects, those films that are kind of like the middle tier films, that in terms of their budget, they're not the huge blockbusters, but at the same time, they're not a small independent film. They kind of like toe that line right in the middle. We're seeing fewer and fewer of those. And as a result, in terms of what we're getting, the input that we're getting in terms of the films that people are seeing, you're either seeing one or the other. And if we're only seeing, the really, really small independent films and, the major blockbusters, and that's all we get, at some point, we need to have that variety in the films that we, can consume. And sometimes what'll happen is that a lot of films, fall through the cracks, as you were talking about, of a lot of filmmakers, producers, what have you, trying to find places that can have their projects. When you're talking about a lot of those streaming services, they shop it, being able to shop their films to various places, and fewer and fewer films are being that are in that realm are being made. That means that we're going to lose out on a lot of these films, that we just talked about, that run the middle of the line. Maybe
at least like theatrically, maybe.
Yeah, because we may lose out on a potential, future film that falls in the category of a lot of these other iconic films. And it's why, because maybe it's too expensive perhaps to be made, for a very meager budget, but at the same time, it's not a huge like superhero film or fantasy film or science fiction, project. So, the studio isn't going to be willing to delve out, those amount of funds for that project, because it's not something that they can make super cheap, or it's something that they don't really feel comfortable that they'll be able to make back on their investment. So you run both of those extremes, and unfortunately, without companies like Castle Rock, you're not going to be able to have a lot of those films that fall, in between there. And perhaps they have some stars in it, but it's just, as I said, it's just not a huge spectacle film, blockbuster film, and at the same time, it may be too expensive to be made cheaply. So it's awesome to see that that Castle Rock is being provided these funds, so that way we can continue to see a lot of those films that kind of run right there in the middle. Because I remember, and speaking what you were talking about, it was something that was mentioned by shout out to John Lee Hancock, who we had on the show a while back, in talking about the film The Little Things. You guys know The Little Things. That was the first release that was a part of the what is
HBO
it, the
Max.
WB, the HBO Max WB dual release or day and day release. And that was a film like that would be something that would be a no-brainer. I mean, you have 3 Oscar winners, three, not 1, not 2, but 3 Oscar winners in that film, and yet it still got a day and day release. Like, it basically,
well, everything did. That's because of the
pandemic. It did, but that's
because of the pandemic, though.
But still, like, a couple of years ago, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, that would have been, I feel like it would have done far better than what it did. But because of the new landscape that we have with, the types of films that are being made these days that are on one extreme or the other, we may see fewer and fewer of films like that have, that quality of talent. Because let's be honest, if you're doing a smaller film, a really cheap film, you're not going to be able to afford 3 Oscar winners. But at the same time, it's not a huge spectacle film, so the studio may be kind of iffy in terms of getting the film made, which is crazy to think about when you have 3 Oscar winners, guys. So
but I think what was selling that movie was just Denzel, because Denzel is like one of the last movie stars, so like his movies do well regardless. But that was that was primarily the pandemic. But no, you're right. I mean, they are getting lost. But I will say though, there are still a few that come out. It seems like at the end of the year. Like, I was trying to find out the budget for House of Gucci, and that's kind of like, I mean, I'm sure they spent a good amount, but I don't think that's like a super ridiculous high budget. But I mean, once again, that is a super high. I mean, it has a lot of people, and Ridley Scott's directing it. So I'd be curious to see what that budget is, but that's not like, I don't think that budget is like ridiculously high. It's probably more mid.
But in terms of,
and that's getting released.
If I'm looking at like the scale, right? I'm looking at like the one scale that's really on the really cheap end that you have for your like really meager budget independent films, and then on the other scale you have like those crazy budget. I understand what you're saying, where it's like it may potentially be, a war bait or what have you. But when I'm thinking of Scott, in terms of his caliber and his pedigree and how he makes his films, he doesn't make his films on the cheap end. Like, he spares no expense in terms of, making sure the quality is like legit. So even though it may not necessarily be a superhero film per se, or a huge spectacle film, in terms of how he does his films, even when it deals with stories that are not on that spectacle end, I feel like he brings that element or that quality to his films. And a lot of films that he does tend to be on the expensive side, like in terms of their budget. They may not be like, 150, $200 million films, but if we're talking about like that middle of the line, I feel like they're going to be closer to those higher budgets than it would be towards like those what is it, indie budgets.
But the thing is, but I'm saying the whole idea is, even with that, like, that's still a problem. Like, that's still an issue for them, because that's not a guarantee. Like, let's be real, these Marvel movies, these Fast and Furious films, these and most of the DC ones, a lot of times they're almost pretty much guarantee, successes, even if not domestically but internationally. That's what I'm saying. Like, a movie like House of Gucci, I want to see it. It looks really good.
Yeah,
I don't see how, even with the stars, like, okay, maybe internationally, maybe that's what sold it or whatever, but you can make that same argument with like The Irishman, but The Irishman was longer, and I guess they're like, oh, it's too long and whatever. I mean, Martin Scorsese, he's made a bunch of big budget films, but like, he's struggling too. So I'm just curious. I'm just saying, even those bigger budgeted ones, even if they're mid to big, a little bit bigger budget, once you start getting to a certain budget, that's when a lot of times they're like, uh-oh, it's a superhero movie. Is it actually, you have to check these boxes almost. And it's like, I'm not saying you can't do it. And Ridley Scott, he's proven himself, but I'm saying even those guys are kind of struggling. Like, look at Dune. I mean, of course, that's like a big sci-fi movie. It's based on, intellectual property, and they made a movie ready. But like, that's also an epic, a sci-fi like that kind of still fits in the category of like those big epic, action or sci-fi type of movies. So, as opposed to like I said, House of Gucci is straight up like a drama, and then it's like a mystery, intrigue, crime thriller. Like, it's relying on its star power and like the director's name. So I'm just saying, that's still very rare, even though I'm saying like we're still gonna, I feel like we're still seeing a few of them, but it's just they're just dying in numbers. Like, they're getting, smaller and smaller, and just how many are being released. So it's really a it's really a change of times, but that's just the reality. So
For sure. And I know we were talking about, switching over to our next story. I know we were talking about the strike, the Iatse strike, and unfortunately, we had another, we had a tragedy that happened, over the course of this week on the set of Russ. So that is the Alec Baldwin film. If you guys, aren't aware of what transpired, is that we did have, someone who died due to a weapon that was fired on set. It was unfortunately, we had a death, and we actually had a injury as well. So if you guys aren't familiar, with that story, in essence, what we had is that this past Thursday, Alec Baldwin accidentally fired, a weapon that not only injured the director of Russ, Joel Souza, but it actually caused the death of a cinematographer, Helena Hutchins. So Jerome, you hear about this unfortunate accident on the set of this film, and what it brings up as as a potential of what can happen on a set, and what are your thoughts about this unfortunate tragedy?
Yeah, I mean, it's so sad, and this should have never happened. I mean, obviously this is still under investigation, so I mean, we're just giving our our thoughts based on what was been reported.
Correct. Yeah.
And like I said, there's newer I keep seeing new stories every day, more details, and it's going to take some time before they really get to the bottom of what actually happened and who's, I guess, liable, and
Correct, yeah.
and what happened. But regardless, I mean, first we got to obviously definitely give our condolences to the family of Helena Hutchins, and obviously, and the director, obviously, he's recovered. I heard that he recovered. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The reason why this is like, this really just doesn't make any sense that this happened, is because there's been tragedies already before. I mean, Brandon Lee famously, he died, I think it was 28. that shouldn't have happened. You know, where like there was like they had a prop gun. I think they had like I was reading. It's technically there was like they had dummy rounds in there, and then when they took it out, no one checked to see if it was clean in there, and part of the fragment was in there. So when they shot the blanks, part of that fragment came out, and it shot him in the back, and he got killed. He got shot in the abdomen, and it's like that's ridiculous. And even though there was a settlement, but there were no criminal charges filed, for whatever reason. There was two other actors. One, I forgot which. Yeah, we have to pull it up. But one actor was playing on a TV show. You probably could look it up. He was playing with the gun. It had blanks in it, and when he shot it towards his head, even though there was no bullet that came out, the pressure pushed towards it fractured his skull, and the skull went into his brain, and then he died from that. I mean, it's like you don't think about stuff like this, but that can happen. There's been other accidents too, like from the Twilight film, with John Landis, but that was a helicopter accident, even though that's just as gruesome and terrible. I mean, there's like I don't even get the details. But you would think by now that, with these tragedies and gun safety measures and, all of the cheaper, easier ways of doing, showing gunfire now with CGI, you could just do that. And it's been done in so many movies, and you don't even need to use blanks. Okay, if some people want to use blanks and that is what you're going to do, there's a certain procedure. And I know we were going down, we were talking about it based on that article with the Hollywood Reporter. I mean, you gotta I'd even bring that up. It's like, you got to treat these. You have to treat these prop weapons like real weapons. I mean, they are. A lot of them are just plugged. They're discharged firearms that are actually, they're made into prop weapons, but they can still shoot, blank blank shells, and there's still gas and heat. And that chain reaction is actually that reaction is still happening. And if there's any type of projectile, any type of fragment in there, it can still kill somebody. And also the pressure too. So I mean, there's a lot of things that people don't really think about with when using these guns. Breaking it down like what you showed when we were looking at that article, the Hollywood Reporter. What was it? We had that. Who was this? Yeah, you had this Hollywood munitions expert was talking about it. What was his name again? But anyway, Brian. Okay, including Brian W. Carpenter, armor and weapons master, who's been working in the industry for 30 years. So, he was saying there's four rules you should follow. No, number one, always treat all weapons as if they're loaded. Don't treat them as props. What is it? So number two, never have your finger on the trigger or pull the trigger until you're ready to discharge the weapon. Number three, never point the weapon at anything that can be harmed or injured. And number four, always be aware of what's in front, behind, and all sides of what you're aiming for. And Carpenter, it says in this article from Hollywood Reporter, Carpenter believes that if number 1 and 3 had been followed on the New Mexico set of the indie Western Rust, no one would have gotten hurt. I mean, it's like, it's crazy hearing some of these things. And it's like, I'm not gonna lie. Like like I said, I've never worked with weapons before on a movie set or anything like that. And it's like, it makes me even think about like, hey, if I shoot something, and you're using weapons, it's like, do you really need to use blanks in the first place? Because like I said, you can just have the weapons, the prop weapons, and you can put the muzzle flare and whatever, use sound effects, and it's still going to look pretty real. There's a lot of movies where that happens. You don't even know that it's been, added in post-production. That's CGI. I know Robert Rodriguez is like a master at that. Like, he does that a lot. And I'm like, wow, it's pretty good. I mean, I will say when people have done CGI blood a lot, that's looked fake, like in that Rambo movie, the fourth one. But I'm sure that's a separate thing. But, it's gotten better. It's improved. So there are ways to do it. So really, there is no excuse. Like, you can do that and it doesn't cost much money. But some people, they want to do everything practical. All right, given that. But if you're going to do something practical, you have to take safety precautions. There's no excuse when someone could get hurt, someone could die, and this is another tragic example. And the thing is, there have been examples already, so it's like I don't understand why people wouldn't follow the protocol or whatever. Now, according to what happened, I mean, from various news sources, yeah, I mean, there's been stories I've read that like I said, this is still ongoing, so they're still investigating. I'm not saying we know everything that happens, like it's still coming out, the details, but yeah, there were supposedly a few misfires, allegedly some accidental misfires that happened on the set earlier, and there were crew members. This is according to an LA Times article, and the Rust crew, it says the Rust crew describes on-set gun safety issues and misfires days before fatal shooting. So I mean, if this stuff is true, I mean, that's really not looking good, because if you're complaining about there being safety issues on set and nobody's addressing them, no one's holding the people accountable who are supposed to be enforcing that, like, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be there's a lot of problems with that, especially now when something tragic like this happens. And then not only that, it's crazy because these films are insured, and you get your insurance, you insure the production, but based on following certain safety protocols. So it's like, if you're not following the safety protocol and something happens, that insurance company could be like, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, and then you're not going to get insured for if you got sued or something happened. Like, so it's like, even from a financial standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. Supposedly, I mean, like I said, this is in the press. This is other people giving their account, their take on the situation or whatever happened. They're saying that some people, some of these, I don't know if it's either the producers or the production manager, so basically, what is it in this article? There were so they had 3 accidental discharges, they were saying, supposedly, and so one of this person, who's, I think they're not mentioning their name though, that's in this article, they said they sent a text message to the unit production manager. We've now had 3 accidental discharges. This is super unsafe. And then they said, according to this person, they were not made aware. Okay. The thing is, it's like, according to this article, they kind of made it sound like, at least these crew members were making it sound like there was this on-set idea of just wanting to rush, get it done. And it's like, it really makes me wonder, like, if that was true. Like I said, I don't know exactly what happened, but based on these different articles I'm reading or whatever, I'm wondering what was supposed to be accomplished. It's like, if you're cutting corners here and there and you're trying to save money, you're going to be spending more money now with these lawsuits. If you have to go to, if there's criminal charges filed, I mean, we don't know if that's going to happen. If there's, like I said, people getting sued, the insurance. I mean, there's so many things now that's just going to be more expensive. Now, of course, that's secondary to the loss of life, which is tragic. It's terrible. But it's like, it makes you wonder. It's like, what was the point of like trying to cut corners if that was done, or just not following all the safety protocols and just not having the right experienced people? Because another thing is, one of the
no, I hear you. Yeah.
Armor, even though she only did like 1 movie before, and her dad is an expert or whatever, she even said on some podcast that she wasn't even sure how to fill the put the blanks in, supposedly. I mean, this is like allegedly.
But I guess I'll hop in, just briefly, while you take care of that. I know you kind of had a
sorry about
issue, but no, you're fine. But I guess, let me just go over, the essential facts real quick, and then I'll just share, my thoughts. So according to the affidavit, and this is a story, and this is from Hollywood Reporter, according to affidavit filed by the Santa Fe County Sheriff Office, Baldwin was told that the prop firearm was safe when it was handed to him by an assistant director, who didn't know that there were live rounds in the weapon. When he pulled the trigger, the live projectile struck and killed said Hutchins and injured Souza. According to the filing, no charges have been filed, of course, and the investigation is ongoing. Now, you have those facts. We talked about, those three rules that were shared
Four rules. He said
again.
four. Yeah.
Well, just say the basic rules that you have, in terms of gun safety, and you have those facts based on what we have in the story. Now, one additional fact that they talk about is just the idea of cartridge blanks themselves. If you guys aren't aware, blank cartridges, also known as blanks, when they are utilized, they're still dangerous, as you already mentioned, Jerome, because when you're dealing with blanks, in essence, you still have the gunpowder involved, just to create that same effect that you would have, with a gunshot. However, the projectile, from my understanding, is not there. So what often happens, and I'll go to the quote that they have in the story, from Harper. He talks about, there's still, in talking about blanks, there's still gunpowder involved, which produces a sought after realism of recoil, noise, and muzzle flash. However, he also notes that sometimes on productions, in order to save on costs, blanks are reloaded, and the cartridges can, or say reload blanks are put in, and that cartridges can still break and become projectiles. So just that idea of again, cutting corners in some cases. And again, I'm not saying that happened on the set, but just the idea that is a possibility that has allegedly happened on other sets. Is really something to think about in terms of just gun safety in general. And I'll just close with this: is that we do enough with special effects that we were just talking about with the Marvel stuff, where you can de-age people and you can do all of these amazing things with effects. There's no reason at this point that we should still be having accidents like this on sets, when the resources are there to be able to ensure that you can still get the effect that you're trying to get when you're having a gun utilized, yet still ensuring that people are that your crew is safe, and that everyone that you have involved with the production, actors, directors, crew, anyone that's surrounding that set is safe, and they don't have to worry about tragic instances like this happening. So
yeah, sorry, and one last thing, I'll just say that actor was John Eric Hexum, who accidentally shot himself in the head while playing Russian roulette on set of the TV series Cover Up. That was in October 1984. So that was the other person in addition to Brandon Lee. But anyway, very
so
sad
again,
story.
like horrible incident, and hopefully condolences out to family. Such a tragic thing to happen. But on a lighter note, wanted to switch gears to a different story that deals with the comedy, to get on a lighter note, and we have a story that made the rounds this week with Wesley Snipes and Tiffany Haddish. They're going to be teaming up for a new project. So according to a story in Deadline, and actually this is an exclusive from Deadline, so hat tip to Deadline. You want to have Ela Samaha, excuse me if I'm butchering your name, Missy Valdez, Gino Taylor, and Daniel Diamond. Their newly launched Luminosity Entertainment are going to have their first movie, the comedy Back on the Strip, which again, as I said, is starring Snipes and Haddish. They will finance Luminosity, that is. They will finance, produce, and distribute. They're going to be distributing films theatrically in the U.S. and doing so with this film as well. The film will mark the theatrical directorial debut of Chris Spencer, the creator and executive producer of Real Husbands of Hollywood, and EP and scribe of Grownish. So it will follow a young man, Merlin Spencer Moore II, who moves to Vegas and to pursue his dream of becoming a magician after losing the woman of his dreams. But when a costume malfunction reveals his physical gifts, he is recruited to become the frontman of an infamous male review group. So the comedy will also it will chronicle a series of escapades as Merlin tries to achieve magician success. pursuing his dream girl and finding a family in the process. It's also going to include some other all-star comedians. So it's going to have JB Smooth, Faison Love, Bill Bellamy, Gary Owen, and many, many others. So Jerome, you hear news of this comedy and the incredible ensemble that they have, not just the two stars that we just mentioned, but the incredible, comedic ensemble that they have. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, initially I added this story because, yeah, I mean, we see Tiffany Haddish in a lot of movies, and like big up to her because she's killing it. Like she's in so many movies. And obviously, she must have a really good agent too, like who's helping her get all these good roles. But no, I found this unique because of Wesley Snipes because this is honestly what I think sets Wesley Snipes apart from his generation of like action stars, because to me he was always like probably like the best actor of all those action stars in that generation, because he really is like a true actor. And this shows, it's like you're seeing him in a lot of like comedies recently. I mean, he was in My Name is Dolomite. He was excellent in that. And then Coming to America, the sequel, Coming to America with the number 2. And he was playing that with General Izzy, and I was just like, this is great. I mean, I just love seeing like, Wesley Snipes coming back, how he's come back, and he's not just doing these action roles. I mean, he always, he started off doing like a mix. Like he would do, he was in some dramas. I mean, remember like Mo Better Blues, and he was in King of New York. And then he kind of got into his action, his action role genre, and he kept doing those, but he would always do like a drama here and there. And then he did do some comedies. I mean, remember To Wong Fu. And he would do action comedies, of course, like Money Train and what was it, White Men Can't Jump. Well, that was more of just a comedy, dramedy or whatever. So he obviously could do it, but I just find it interesting now. It's like, as he's older or whatever, of course, I mean, I love him as Blade. I love him in a lot of action movies, Passenger 57, Drop Zone, Murder 1600. He could do, but to see him now do all these like comedic type of roles, and like he kills it. Yeah, Rising Sun. Oh hell yeah, that's great. Rest in peace, Sean Connery. Demolition Man, of course, he played the villain. Like, I just love seeing how like he's doing these different types of roles that you're not usually accustomed to always seeing him, because like I said, he was the action. He was like one of the top action guys, and it's like, but he has that range, and he's definitely showing that. So big up to Wesley Snipes for switching it up and diversifying as an actor. And yeah, I mean, this cast is great. I mean, you got Faison Love and JB Smooth, all these other guys in there. So and one other thing I will say too, I think it's also notable to say, this guy, what is it, Chris Spencer? Okay, so he was a scribe of Grownish, so that's some scripted credit, but I find it like very interesting. It's like, it shows you can make that transition if you're executive producing, what is it, a reality show. I mean, I think that's a reality show. Is it Real Husbands of Hollywood?
That show is hilarious. I don't know if any of you guys have watched, an episode of that series, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, but isn't that like Kevin Hart's in that or something? Like, and some other.
Yep.
But I'm saying it's a reality show though. It's still a reality show. So the idea of, I will be honest. I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen. This is a good example. A lot of times people get stuck in the reality show world. They stay there, and it's hard to transition. Even though it is true, Kenya Barris, he did produce like America's Next Top Model, so he did it too. So big up to him. And now he has Blackish and all these spinoffs. I really like seeing this because you do not see this. It's not very often where you see people who are in a certain world of entertainment make this transition, and now they're doing scripted, and now they're doing, usually you'll see producers who are maybe in one field, like they're producing scripted content, and then now they're like, oh, maybe I'll dabble in reality or dabble in documentaries, but they already got the scripted stuff down. Usually you don't really see it the other way around. Now, obviously this guy also, he was writing, he's written for Grownish. So he has experience there, but I just like seeing that because, like I said, I've worked firsthand on like reality shows. I've worked, and other stuff. And it's like, I've seen people who've gotten stuck in that world and like never transitioned out of it. And, it shows you can do it, and even actors too. Like, what's her name? Jamie Chung. I remember she was on Real World San Diego, and she's been in a bunch of movies. So it's possible. If
And
there's
I
a
mean, I
will,
will
there's a
say
way.
this. I will say this first and foremost. The fact that he was had a hand in that show. As I said, that show is hilarious. If you guys have a chance to check out that show, it is quite funny. I haven't watched, mind you, the latter seasons, but at least those first couple of seasons are pretty hilarious. And I will, make a, it is a reality show I'll say in quotation marks. I would say it's more of like a mockumentary where it kind of they're playing themselves, but it is kind of like a very heightened version of reality, and that they kind of make
Reality
up
TV parody. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
make up some things here and there, to kind of make things really exaggerated and funny, but they are kind of playing a exaggerated version of themselves. So I will make that distinction there. But in terms of the ensemble, and in terms of the pedigree of who you have behind and creatively in putting this film together, on paper, it looks like it will be quite, quite a entertaining, a comedy. I mean, it's still. I'll still wait to see, what we have, based off a trailer, but at least the premise and the potential of that, and the ensemble, the hilarity that can ensue just off the premise alone, and the ensemble that you have in place and a creative team, then it feels like, I mean, you have all the ingredients needed in order to make this, a memorable comedy. Now, again, a lot of times when you have, all the right pieces, so to speak, it still falls apart. And then even in other situations, you have things on paper that seem like they wouldn't work, and they somehow work very, very well once you put them all together. So the jury's still out on it, but at least from what's on paper, it seems like it can be a pretty special comedy. But do you have any final thoughts before we get to our last story?
No, I mean, I'll definitely check it out. And like I said, I'm a big Wesley Snipes fan. And also, yeah, I mean, I met him a few times too. Once at what is it, Inside Man premiere, and then at
At
Comic
Comic
Con.
Con,
I
yeah.
was trying to wait to get into that party that y'all were in. But luckily, I waited. I met Snipes again, so that
Hey,
was
it happened
he was
for a
very
reason,
nice.
right? You wouldn't have
He was, and
went
he's a very
Snipes.
he's a very great. I mean, like I said, I don't know him like that, but like the times I met him, like he was very gracious, and he seems like a good guy, and I love his work, and I'm glad that he's killing it, and he's making more films. Like we need to see some more Snipes movies, like and I hope he's in the new Blade movie as Whistler or something. Anyway,
Yeah,
or
for
as a
sure.
mentor or some sort of cameo. Come on, Kevin
For
Feige,
sure.
you can do it.
You gotta honor that original, even if you have him in another role. That would be pretty cool. But moving on to the last story that made the round. So this week, there was news that many of the features, and that's why I have the rain there. Sad rainy day that in the world of Marvel,
It's a
where
good transition too.
many of
We're
our
just talking about
that many of our releases are being delayed, unfortunately. So I'll pull it from a story, but it is everywhere. But I'll pull it from a Variety. Is that many of the releases, upcoming film releases, are being delayed by a couple of months. So to be more specific, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, previously set to release in March 25th to be specific, is moving to May. Thor: Love and Thunder, so the fourth installment of the Thor franchise, was originally set to arrive in May, but is now being pushed to July. So July 8th, it was originally scheduled to come out May 6th. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is seeing probably the largest push, I want to say, or the biggest, is that you have. Well, no, it looks like that we do have one more in the story, but at least out of the Marvel films, is moving from July 8th to November, so November 11th. And also included in the story, talking about the slate of Marvel films, we have the untitled Indiana Jones installment. Was originally slated to come out in July 29th of 2022. It has now been pushed to June, almost a year, June 30th, 2023. We have a live action Disney film is being slated to originally come on July 14th, 2023, and it's been removed. The Marvels, which is the third installment of, well, not the third, excuse me, the second film in Captain Marvel franchise, has been moved from November 11th and is now being pushed to February. So just a couple of months later, February of next year, February 17th. Ant-Man and Wasp and the Wasp Quantumania is moving from February 17th to July 28th of that year. We also have another untitled Marvel project. It's been removed from the schedule, which was originally scheduled to come out on that day that Ant-Man moved to. And then we also have another Marvel property, which was scheduled to arrive on October 6th of that year and has been removed. And let's see, what do we have left? So two more. We have an untitled 20th Century project that was removed, that was coming in October as well, on October 20th, and another Marvel project that has been moved from, it was dated for November 10th and actually moved up a week.
3.
And moved up a week to November 3rd, 2023. So we have an entire lineup of Marvel properties that have been moved. So, you know,
I'm sure one of those Blade and one of those probably Fantastic Four.
Yeah. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that, Jerome?
I mean, this doesn't really like surprise me. I mean, like I said, we're not in normal times. So with the pandemic, I mean, like look, I'm just happy some of these movies that just recently came out this year finally came out. I mean, look, we finally had Black Widow come out earlier in the year, and then we had Shang-Chi in September, and now we're getting Eternals coming out like was it like next week or so? Like, well, really soon, early in November, and then we'll have Spider-Man: No Way Home. So I mean, like I said, all those films should have come out earlier, but now it's like, you know, you had adjustments to the calendar for everything else, and you know, with that, there are possibilities. There could be delays still based on, you know, like they're saying it's production issues based on certain things filming. I mean, that definitely has an impact on the Marvel films because everything's connected. So they need to come out in a certain order. And I don't mind them pushing stuff back if, like, yeah, you need to make sure that movie's completed in time and it's done well. I could wait a little bit. I mean, they have so many Marvel films coming out every year. We're good. If we got to wait a little bit, that's fine. I mean, you have TV shows in the meanwhile to watch that they're releasing. Because remember, Hawkeye's coming out soon. So, I mean, you know, and then you have, Miss Marvel, and then eventually She-Hulk. I mean, they're doing so many things that we have plenty of Marvel properties to, you know, whet our appetite in the meanwhile. But it seems like with that Indiana Jones installment, like, yeah, I mean, they kind of had no choice because Harrison Ford had that injury, but at least they were filming the other scenes as much as they could without him. But I mean, that one I'm not as excited to watch. Even though, like I said, I'll watch it, but I'm just like, okay, you know, hopefully they can, you know, I guess they're gonna pass the baton on somehow. Because I mean, there's no way I don't see Harrison Ford doing any more Indiana Jones films after this one. But it'd be interesting to see how they maybe send him off or do whatever they got to do. Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, I mean, like I said, we're in something called a pandemic, people. So, you know, this stuff happens. So there's gonna be adjustments, and like I said, it's not the end of the world. I think it only really becomes an issue when it's a film. Like, I mean, like I will say, even though I still enjoyed Black Widow, I do think the delay of that film affected the anticipation for that type of film, because it was, like I said, it was more of like a prequel, a film that should have really come out around when Civil War came out, or just earlier. There would have been more excitement, I think. But I think with like newer movies or sequels, or you're introducing new characters, they have a little more leeway, because we haven't seen an Eternals film yet. So finally, okay, there was a delay, but we're going to see it soon. We don't know these characters. A lot of people don't know who the Eternals are. I mean, comic book fans maybe do, but there's, you know, it's going to be cool to see that on the screen. You know, and then all these other sequels and everything, like, people already know what happened before. you had you had what happened in Black Panther. Then he came, he showed up in Infinity War, Endgame, and he was in Civil War before all that. But it's like people are anticipating; they want to see that next, Black Panther film, and the same with Doctor Strange, all these other ones. So it's like all these are taking place later, or for the most part, they are. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see some time travel and multiverse stuff too, but that's I think that's fine. Now, maybe, like I said, if there were like major delays, like everything is like years later, okay, then that might start pissing people off some more and be like, okay, we need to see these movies. But these are just a few months later, so but I can't wait to see when they come out. So
for sure. Some of those points, I mean, that you made, I would second in terms of talking about the idea that it's not a huge deal because like we do have other properties that are on the way. I mean, we do have a lot of those Disney Plus properties that are there to kind of hold us over, so to speak, in terms of our passion to consume a lot of the Marvel properties. So I mean, there is that, but one thing that you haven't brought up that I feel is even worth mentioning, because they do talk about the fact that these delays are not because of the fact that there's a concern over the films making money, because as Shang-Chi demonstrated, is that folks are still going out to the movie theaters and are still doing so. So it's more so because of the circumstances of making a lot of these major blockbusters and what we have with the landscape that we're dealing with. But one thing that I will mention too is by pushing many of these projects back by a couple of months, not only is it due to the fact that the MCU is so intricate that by pushing one thing back can affect the entire slate of properties, it also is a good business decision due to the fact that you don't want to have your films all on top of each other and hemorrhaging money from each other. So like you want to be able to give each film enough space to have its theatrical run before the next film comes out. You don't want to have, one film come out and then have another film come out like a couple of weeks after that or a month after that. You want to allow, that initial film to earn as much, revenue as possible before the anticipation builds with another installment. Because I know from what I understand, allegedly we actually already have a Spider-Man trailer, or I should say the second Spider-Man trailer, if you will. And from what I understand, it will arrive after the Eternals comes out, because there's a concern of taking away the thunder or stealing the anticipation from Eternals by throwing in a Spider-Man trailer. You want to make sure that there's enough buzz about your current film before you move on to the next one. And you don't want to kind of hemorrhage money away from a potential film in that regard. So I'll mention that too, because I feel in talking about, I feel like this is very relevant to a pastime that I have that I am dealing with in a major way in this last quarter of 2021, and that's going to conventions. And a lot of conventions have been pushed in such a way where instead of it being stretched out over the course of a season, for those of you that are aware, that aren't aware, oftentimes cons, we have them in the winter and we have them in the fall. But for the most part, a lot of them happen, during the summer. Many of them, in many of the major ones, they happen during the summer. And this year has been a weird year where a lot of those cons have been pushed back to this last quarter of the year. And as a result, it feels like you have a con if not every week, every other week. And so that could be a huge thing to deal with when you're normally accustomed not only of getting rest from one show to another, but also financially of going to each of these shows where you have some breathing room of going from one show to the other. So I feel like that's a major thing that hasn't been discussed, is that idea of protecting each of these properties and ensuring that they're able to get their space or have their space before the next film comes out. But Jerome, do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, I mean, I'm just excited to see these films, and yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to think about. But I think they do pretty much space them out. They like, even if they push stuff back, they usually try to space it out regardless to give each other, enough room to breathe. But it's just interesting seeing how, like, because they're releasing so many films and TV shows that, there is a point where it might get like, you think there's oversaturation, but at the same time, I feel like they have enough different properties and characters, and the TV world is kind of, it's separate, and it's separate in scope and the characters. So I don't think it's gotten to that point yet, but that is definitely something they have to watch out for. But I mean, hey, they know.
And
what
I would say also in that regard, I mean, most people, in terms of consuming Marvel stuff, like whether it's film or TV, like you and I, like we're in, maybe a handful of others that we know. Well, more than a handful, but a good deal of others, they're on top of every single thing, but that can't be said about every single person. Some people are more casual fans, and it's a lot for them to ask to say, oh, well, this new show comes out in a week. Oh, by the way, we got a new movie coming out 2 days after that. Oh, we have another show coming out in a month. Like sometimes for some of those casual fans, like you have to be able to give them that breathing space too, to be able to consume that content and not overwhelm them with too much. Yeah. But without further ado, I know we've been carrying on for a while, but we thank for those of you that have been watching and throwing in your questions about some of the news stories that we had. So I'm your host, Brandon Choi. But before I wrap up, I'll shoot it over to Jerome.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for watching. This was also, forgot to mention. Yeah, this is our. I think it was our. Yeah, it's our 35th episode.
Wow, already.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy? But yeah, we appreciate all the support, and what's it called? Yeah, definitely. You can follow me at JWBourgeois21 on Twitter and on Instagram. And, you can follow us on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited, on Twitter at Move and Shake UNLTD, and also Facebook at Move and Shake UNLTD. And there's Instagram, definitely Movers Shakers Unlimited. Also, if you want to support us on Patreon, you can support us at patreon.com/Movers Shakers Unlimited. Like, follow, share, with your friends, family. Just get the word out. We're trying to definitely add to our subscribers. When we hit certain thresholds, we're gonna try and have some special maybe some special announcements and stuff. So keep watching, keep listening, and yeah, man, we have some other, I know Brandon and I, we definitely always are going to different fun events. So you might see us in different locations. But in the meanwhile, just check us out every week. And we love bringing this content to you guys and talking about all these fun, exciting topics in entertainment and business. So I'll bring it back to you, Brandon.
All right, awesome. So yeah, second, many of those things Jerome said about following us on Twitter, on Instagram. And also, if you so desire, being a Patreon supporter with us, as well. But I'll also give the challenge to you guys of, if there, some comments that, or to say some stories that you guys, are, interested in hearing more about, feel free to reach out to us and share your thoughts of some other things that maybe there's some shows that you're really fascinated by and you would like to have us cover or do. Keep us a wind of it. Other than that, you can find me, Brandon Choi ENT, on Twitter, and Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. And additionally, there are some awesome things that are on the way. Again, I'm not able to comment specifically on them right now, but trust me, they are pretty awesome, of some things that are on the way in the coming weeks and even in the coming months. So make sure you keep it locked here. I'll try to share it, make sure that I stay on top and sharing it with you guys, whether it's on Facebook, on Twitter, or on Instagram. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and I will See you soon. Peace.
Peace out.